Film is one of the many art forms that will be affected by the opening of DePauw's Creative School in fall 2024. You're listening to the third episode of DePauw Art Time Capsule, which will focus on film at DePauw University. I'm Taylor Fleming. Professor Jordan Scholl is one of DePauw's newest professors. He became an assistant professor of film and media arts in August 2023. He quickly became involved with the film community on campus, including acting in the DePauw Film Club project Moral Dilemma. Professor Scholl's expertise in film includes script writing, which he discussed in his interview. Here it is now. DePauw has sort of two film programs at present. There's film studies, and then there is film and media arts, and one, I believe, is being sunset relatively soon. So to someone like me who doesn't entirely know the difference between the two, can you explain what is the difference between film studies at DePauw and film and media arts at DePauw?
Yeah, absolutely. So what used to be called film studies, has now fully made the transition to being film and media arts. We definitely still have some people in the major who are film studies majors because we weren't going to go and change the name on them after they'd signed up for something. But the program itself is called film and media arts. And that change in name was in part to mark a change in emphasis. For a long time, DePauw has had film studies in which we are looking at and analyzing film in terms of its history and theory and the sort of importance of that film, as well as some production and some screenwriting that's also been housed in other programs and departments. Recently, we've decided to make a push to add more production to that, to that ambit, and to have more writing and to really make ourselves more of a place where you can come and make film during your time here. And so that is part of what the name change reflects, and also a major change in the curriculum that was finished just before I arrived. So I'm only familiar with the new curriculum, but it definitely emphasizes both studying film and making film.
So speaking of the curriculum, and what are skills and concepts that you make sure that your students know in your classes or independent studies and such?
Yeah, I do think of those. I'll start by talking about those separately. I do think of the film studies and the film production side very much as supporting each other. But in terms of the curriculum, we sort of focus on one at a time, at least at first. So I've been teaching the Introduction to Film and Media class, in which we essentially work on two primary film analysis skills. One of those is formal analysis, in which we look at the formal features of film, everything from editing to sound to mise en scène, anything where you can actually look directly at the film text and say, this is how the film works. So we work on analyzing film from that direction. We've also worked on analyzing film from a contextual dimension, in which you consider how is the film connected to the world outside it. What is important about this film? What does it mean in terms of film history or world history, right? That could be, there are many different ways of thinking about a film contextually, but in that move to context, you start to think about films being bigger than what they are. And I think that really when you get into the interesting part about studying film, it's when you can put those two together, when you can look inside the film at the tiny little things like a character smiling in 2 frames, or an edit that's made a tiny bit earlier than it would normally be, and you can connect that to sort of big issues in the world about how we understand other people, how we empathize, how we sort of construct our perception. So that's my pitch for the sort of main overarching structure of the intro to Film and Media Arts. I also teach screenwriting and a little bit of production. Screenwriting is a big part of my professional work, and so for screenwriting too, I think you need to very deeply understand film and also understand storytelling. And so I really take an approach that is supposed to be both analytical and creative, and trying to think about how you might integrate working in a creative genre that is in many ways very formulaic while also pursuing your own creative endeavors.
What characteristics would a screenplay have where if you read it, you would say, oh my gosh, that was incredible?
That is a fantastic question, in part because you never know before you get it, and it's always a surprise. And I think part of the joy of reading a screenplay and getting that feeling, or consuming any art and getting that feeling, is the sense that you wouldn't be able to say what that is ahead of time. Now, with that said, there's also things that we know are good about things. I care very much about, characters. Many people talk about needing lifelike characters that seem like people who could exist in the world. That's not necessarily what I'm looking for, but I do want characters that are interesting, consistent, well-drawn, capacious, that sort of get at something that we do understand about people, even if the character, him or herself, is not, particularly realistic. And then the other one is story. We tell each other stories all the time. We sit around campfires and spin yarns. Like, everybody knows how to tell their friends a story. And I think many of the best screenplays that I've read feel like somebody just wants to tell you a story that they'd really like you to hear.
What role does film faculty play in the student-created films here at DePauw?
Well, there are lots of different roles that faculty can take, and I think one of the wonderful things about the DePauw film community is that there's a lot of filmmaking that goes on here that doesn't have anything to do with the faculty. There's the DePauw Film Club. Actually, I filled in. I am not an actor. I do not like being in front of the camera. I find it to be a horrible place to be. But I did end up filling in for somebody who had dropped out at the last minute in one of the recent DePauw film clubs. And it was really delightful to see just students making films in their spare time because they wanted to. And also seeing, students who had been in the program for longer, students who had been, learning a lot of these skills, and then were about to transition out of DePauw, thinking really conscientiously about how they were going to, teach the next person who was going to direct the films next year to do that. People had sort of built a crew in a conscientious way that was getting skills to people, and that is assuring that there will be continuity in the sort of filmmaking among students here, which is, I think, a really beautiful and wonderful thing.
What are some other ways that film faculty mentor the filmmaking students here?
Yeah, I think so. I will also say that the film faculty here are wonderful. This is my first year here, and people always ask you how your new job is going, and I say to everybody who asks me that I love the people I work with, and they're sometimes shocked because that's not everybody's experience going to a new institution. We have really wonderful faculty, and I think part of what is great about them is that everybody really cares about the program, and everybody's really approachable. So, even shortly after I got here, I had students coming into my office hours who weren't in my classes to talk about their projects, which is fabulous, and I think speaks to a characteristic of the program that people feel comfortable asking for and seeking advice and seeking feedback. And I think that's important in any art form, but film is one of the most collaborative art forms that there is. You cannot make one alone. And so I think that's a really great thing. That's one of the ways, just those informal types of feedback, collaboration, mentoring. But there's also a number of structures in place. So the senior capstone, I think, is a nicely put together project. It's a quarter credit class in the fall in which you're preparing to do your capstone, and then a full credit course in the spring. So you really do have a year, half of which you can go a little bit more slowly and think a little bit more capaciously and really make sure that you're ready to hit the ground running during your last semester when you really need to hit the ground running, because making a film or writing a thesis-length analytical essay or writing a feature-length screenplay are all projects that are very intensive.
How do you balance being a professor with your own filmmaking and other creative pursuits?
I'm still figuring that out. Like I said, this is my first year here, so I don't totally have the answers to that yet. I'm working on several other projects, some of which are moving along smoothly, and some of which are a little bit stalled. DePauw, though, I've found has been very supportive of those projects in the first place, just because there are great and supportive faculty, other faculty here with whom I've shared my work. I also felt very invited to do that in a way that I hope our students feel invited to as well. And DePauw is, for a liberal arts school of this size, DePauw is one of the best at supporting its faculty's creative endeavors. I have a course release for next fall for a screenplay I'm working on called Parlor Games that I'm going to be, finishing in the summer and revising in the fall. So that'll certainly help.
And kind of wrapping up here, there's going to be a lot of changes in the fall of this year with the official launch of DePauw's new creative school. So what are your hopes and fears for the creative school as it stands right now?
Yeah, I am very excited to learn more about the creative school, to see how things happen, to see how they shake out. As we talked about at the beginning of this conversation, film is in a transition point where we're going from being primarily studies to studies and production. And so I think it's a very exciting time to think about how we can build the program into a place that can attract people from far and wide who do want to come and make film, and whose primary interest in college is making and analyzing film. In order to do that, there are a number of steps that we still need to take. There are expanded facilities, expanded equipment, all of the sort of logistical headaches of making a film are, increased when that is within an institutional setting within an institutional setting. But I think the indications that we're going to be able to do that are good, and the fact that the culture of film here is so strong is a really good sign for that. So my hopes are that we do it, and my fears are that we don't.
That was an interview with Film and Media Arts Professor Jordan Scholl. Now it's time to hear from Film and Media Arts major, or should I say Film and Media Arts alum, Hyungmin Lee. He served as the president of DePauw Film Club. Lee has also created several successful short films, including Spark, which was screened at PopCon Film Festival. Here's my interview with him. What has been your film career at DePauw? Have you made films? Have you taken film classes? What has that journey looked like for you?
So my film career basically, professionally, it began at DePauw because prior to coming to DePauw, I had no official professional experience. So at DePauw, I kind of was introduced to mostly everything about film production. So all the technical things, camera work, directing, all the positions that are required to make a film. So director, DP, which is director of photography, AD, assistant director, sound engineer, everything I was introduced to at DePauw. And here I made 3 to 4 official short films so far. That is kind of like a blessing, I guess, to make that many films, and I'm still working on my thesis film right now. I have been fortunate enough to receive film festival selections, which is viewed as more of a step into your professional career. So I found that at DePaul my junior year, so that's good. Basically, my film career began here. And I don't remember the second part of your question.
Have you taken any film classes, which I presume
Yeah.
you have, but
Yeah, so basically freshman year, I already knew that I wanted to do film. So since freshman year, I took intro to film, and then from then on, I took every film class that I could, and I knew I wanted to go into film production right off the bat. So I took like film production courses in a row. So by like end of sophomore year, I was basically really familiar with film production. That the courses that DePaul had to offer, I already took them all. So by junior year, I was just retaking classes or just making my own films. So yeah, I took a lot of film classes because I already knew what I wanted to do. So I can say that I'm really familiar with like 90% of film classes at DePaul. Yeah.
I'm really interested in the fact that you've retaken some classes. What has that experience been like? Are there enough film classes?
Yeah, so the class that I retook was the highest film production course, which is called Creating a Short Film. And except the thesis class, film class that DePaul offers, Creating a Short Film was like the highest level film production course that I found, and I took that sophomore year. And because it was the class that allowed me to make my first short film, I wanted to do it again. And I saw that it was repeatable, so I just retook the class because I wanted to continue making films even before my thesis film. So that's why I retook that class, which was well worth it, I feel like, because it was a different professor. I think for film courses, the professor is way heavier. Like, the class is way dependent on the professor because each professor has their own creative, like, different aspects that teach you different things, even though they're teaching the same class. And I think creativity and problem solving is really crucial to filmmaking because, like, there's always a problem that it's like unrelated to film, but you have to deal with, and you have to do it creatively. So I think that's why retaking class is like a good idea. And talking about DePaul having enough film classes, I think DePaul does have a good amount of film analysis theory classes, like not bad considering the amount of film students we have, because we have a really small number of film students and a small film department. So like proportionally, I think it's all right. Like there are not tons of people who would want to do film production, but I think I would have liked a little more variety of choices to take because of the small film department. I had to kind of create my own class or retake the classes that I liked. And yeah, speaking of creating my new classes, I had to create like independent studies of what I wanted to do, mostly film production. I think I'm doing my third or fourth one right now. So, but yeah, I think the professors are what matter, and we have a good, not number of professors, but we have good professors that teach us different things, although a small amount of professors.
What specific professors have been really impactful to your journey?
Well, there's a lot. I'll just start by chronologically. When I first came here, Professor Brian McNeil was here. He's not here anymore. He is at, I believe, Ohio University, but he was my first introduction to film. I took intro to film with him. I did intro to digital film production with him, and then I did creating a short film with him. So I had 3 semesters of Brian, and he was like my mentor and kind of introduction to the filmmaking world. And then after he left, DePaul hired a new professor, Professor Dahi Yun, and she just happened to be Korean, just like me. So we grew close. and we could speak in Korean because she's more comfortable in Korean. So like in that way, she was really helpful as a kind of like a Korean immigrant. So she kind of understood my perspective, so I could connect with her on that way. And she was also a filmmaker too, just like Brian. I had a lot of things to learn from her as another filmmaker, not just like a film professor, but an actual filmmaker, as I want to become a filmmaker and director and screenwriter. So that was helpful. Another professor is Seth Friedman. He's not a filmmaker, but he is a really like proficient and thought evoking professor. That he's a film scholar and film I don't want to say critic, but he writes books on films. He watches them and then does research, like heavy research on them. And taking his classes, like this is my 5th class that I'm doing with him this semester. It's more like a small independent study, but I took five classes with him, and every time I take his class, it feels like my knowledge of film doubles, of how to read films and how to understand films and how people and history and cultures view film and are affected by film. And so like he has been a really big impact of my perspective of viewing film and how the world kind of views film as well. And I have so many professors. I'll say Cheryl Lewis. She's a French professor who teaches French language, but also she had her master's in film. I think, I'm not sure, but it's film analysis. She's not a filmmaker as well, but she is really knowledgeable on global cinema, and that taking her class made my perspective on the world and its relation to cinema wider, and like open my perspectives. And yeah, another professor, Jordan Scholl, I know he came this year, but he is a filmmaker. He's a mostly screenwriter, and he's been really helpful because right now he is doing filmmaking stuff and actively a filmmaker at the moment. And so going to his office hours and taking his class and talking about how to write a script and talking about like formulating a good story, whether it's narrative or documentary. It's been learning a lot from him. Yeah, JP, of course, he's my boss and friend, but I don't know if I can say that. But like, I'm also doing an independent study documentary under him while also working for him. And he's been a great help about the industry because he worked at HBO as a producer. I think he has like a lot of knowledge on the industry itself and like the social side of things, of dealing with people and like how to connect with people and finding opportunities to open new doors for projects or jobs. So in that aspect, he's been a really good help in teaching me kind of the world of the film industry and how to navigate your career in it. Yeah.
Yeah. We have such a great faculty at DePaul.
Yeah.
That was fun to listen to. Your experience submitting your films to festivals, how did that work? Who at DePaul helped you? Just talk about that process.
My junior year, for my creating a short film class, I filmed my second short film, Spark, and that was kind of the time where I was learning about film festivals. And so Professor Dahi was initially the person who told me to submit to film festivals because she is a filmmaker and she has had film festival success. So she suggested submitting, and she always suggests her students to submit to film festivals because I think it's a good experience. Even if you get selected by a local one, it's a good experience to connect with other people, and especially an opportunity to connect you with other projects that is not Hollywood or like big corporate filmmaking jobs from big companies. So I submitted through her advice, and I did a lot of talking with Professor Seth, and he told me about like just in his class we learned a lot about film festivals and just like how independent filmmakers find success in it throughout history. So I talked with him about kind of my journey as well, because I want to be a filmmaker. So he kind of put some context and knowledge about film festivals while I was doing more research on film festivals when I was trying to submit. So when I submitted to film festivals, I submitted to a lot of local ones and a lot of closer area film festivals, because those were the more probable ones that I would get into, because film festivals, a lot of them prioritize you showing up or like supporting local filmmakers, not like the big like company filmmakers, but more like independent. And so I just submitted to 10 film festivals and I got selected by 2, which is not bad. I think
Yeah, congratulations.
thank you. Yeah. They say like the percentage of getting in is probably 1% to 10%. So that like sounds about like right. I guess 20%, 2 out of 10. So I'm thrilled with it. Like even one selection is enough for me. Through that, I got a lot of experience of how to apply and dealing with interacting with the film festival once I'm selected, and kind of going through the process of communicating with them about potentially being there and doing a panel or like doing an interview afterwards. But because I was a student, I couldn't attend both festivals. I would like to in the future. But yeah, I learned a lot about applying, and I'm planning to apply. I mean, not apply, but submit my films to those festivals for my upcoming films.
One final question for you here. What are your hopes and fears about the creative school as a film student?
I guess my hopes about the film department next year with the creative school is that the film department will receive more recognition and attention, even though we are a small department. Because we are small, I think before we kind of were neglected in terms of access to a lot of things compared to other departments. Like our events or our projects weren't as prioritized or given attention to, as opposed to a major or a department that's bigger with more students, and that would be more prioritized in terms of giving them space or having bigger events or better prepared events, more funding for events, more funding for their projects, and connection to career such as internships. And so I'm hoping that through the creative school, film students will have higher access to just equipment such as cameras, lighting, even green screen. Because right now I know it's part of D3 TV, but I think film like requires a lot of collaboration with other departments. So even like the music department have a lot of access to a lot of the things in GCPA, but I wish they would share that with the film department and other departments as well, so that we can have a better chance to collaborate with one another. So like just sharing spaces, maybe having some film classes prioritized, because I'm just gonna say this, but in the past, like the film classrooms, they were like the worst classrooms. Like we got the last choices out of all the departments. So like our classroom like environment, because I feel like I don't know who they is, but like the upper people were like, oh, you guys are making films, you guys can do it anywhere. So like they didn't really care about where we do it, because they don't really know. I hope we get good classrooms and good access to the resources that we need to effectively be creative and collaborate with others, such as like School of Music, dancing department, like the art department. We have a really good art department, but I hope we can collaborate more with the art department, and also not to mention the theater department. Theater department is pretty big, but there's not really a big collaboration with film right now, which I don't really understand, because acting and film go hand in hand, but we do not really encourage film acting or don't really explore that at DePaul. So in my past 2 to 3 years, I've been trying to bridge the gap by interacting with theater friends and just trying to cast them in films and stuff like that, and forming DePaul Film Club. So that's my hope, is to keep the collaboration going, open up more doors for film department to just have more access overall. And yeah, I guess I kind of explained my fears, but to go deep into it, my fear is basically after I graduate, when the creative school opens up, kind of things going the same way, just having the title of a creative school and not really any big changes happening. But yeah, that's my fear, of just like things staying the same, and how the film students just getting the same treatment of just like not really being prioritized. Not that is bad. Like, my experience at DePaul is great because I actively sought out opportunities, and I wouldn't take no for an answer. Like, if you really want it, it will happen, but I think not everyone is willing to go out of their way to like seek those opportunities, because it's hard. It's hard to push through when there's no way.
Yeah.
So my fear is like maybe like DePaul Film Club like kind of deteriorating because they're being discouraged, because they're not being supported enough, maybe through funding or access of like cameras, equipment, or like spaces that we can film in. Yeah, so that's my fear of the film department. But I think, yeah, I can't predict the future, but I'm hoping to leave with a good group of film students that will continue to just persevere and be creative as they can, even with the restrictions. So I'm not like big on like complaining, like I've like made my own opportunities, so it is possible. It's just harder for our department. Hopefully it'll get better and more accessible and more open to others, so that we can collaborate and just have fun together. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for talking to me today.
Of course, thank you for having me. Yeah.
Thank you for listening to DePaul Art Time Capsule. I hope this episode inspired you to look deeper at the film community on DePaul University's campus. We have one episode left of DePaul Art Time Capsule, which will focus on music at DePaul, featuring interviews with Molly Murphy and Professor Alyssa Harbert.